Here's your typical fridge in a trailer with on-off and automatic or gas, or if the check light comes on, you got a problem. So that way you can set it on automatic to run either on electricity or gas, depending on what's available to it. It'll favor electricity, and otherwise it'll switch to the gas. This particular one has just a small freezer inside of the one-door fridge. A lot of them have two doors. This set of fins is what keeps your refrigerator section cool. So these get cold, and in turn what that leads to, if somebody stands there with the fridge door open in humid weather, is that these will get covered in ice or condensation. And there's no self-defrost in these things, so what you're faced with is trying to keep the fridge door closed, just like at home. Close the door, and preventing this from frost buildup on here. If frost does build up on here, which it will eventually, you would turn the fridge off with the on-off button, and then you'd get a hairdryer. And depending on the heat that the hairdryer produces, like you would want to have it on a high fan speed, and don't put it too close to the plastic because it'll melt it. But what you want to do is direct the hairdryer air onto these fins to melt off the frost that's collected on them. They'll run into this tray and then out through a drain hose. Outside of the trailer at that lower door behind the fridge, there's the little hose runs into a cup. And as long as that cup doesn't fill too full, life will be good. But if you've got a whole bunch of frost on here and in the freezer, then just on here, because the freezer doesn't have a drain. So if a whole bunch of frost melts from here and goes down the hose, it's conceivable that cup might fill up and overflow. So what a lot of people in the park have done is they'll take that hose, and instead of having to go in the cup, they'll divert it outside of the that grill. And I'll show you that later. The freezer section, similarly the back section here, is the part that gets cold, where these screws are. There's a metal plate behind there that gets really cold. And frost will build up on this surface. So same deal you would, if you were getting a heavy layer of frost, which heavy might be where you can't see these screws anymore, where they're totally covered with frost. So then you'd empty the freezer, turn off the fridge, using the hairdryer, warm that area up. Don't get too close because you don't want to melt the plastic. Have some towels ready to sop up the water that's going to appear in the bottom. Defrost that back plate or back panel, and then once it's all dry, put your stuff back in, and don't forget to turn the fridge back on. So I just learned something. This is a frost-free fridge. It runs on 110 volt only, so no propane. So that would be a problem if you need to run it on propane, but it's frost-free, which is really cool. Here's your typical two-door fridge. As I mentioned in the other trailer, some of them are now coming as a two-door frost-free that runs on AC or 12 volt, but not gas. This is the more traditional one where it runs on AC or gas. And it's got the freezer compartment. Here's those screws holding on the metal plate. This is familiar to me, this is the kind I have. And again, if you get frost buildup, which you might get depending on how often you open the freezer and how often it's kept open, you turn the power off and then take everything out of the freezer, put it into a cooler, get out your hairdryer. Again, don't get too close to the plastic, melt it, but direct it against that back plate, and using towels soap up the water that's going to run off. On our particular trailer, we have just a wire bar here. I see on this one they've made it a tray on the freezer door, which is easier because then with ours stuff was falling out, where there was just a wire here, it would fall through. So I ended up going to the dollar store and putting some dollar store baskets along here, whereas now with this version they've taken care of that by having the tray. In the fridge portion, same deal. You've got the metal fins here. Now this one, I don't see a light on. I don't know if that's because they don't have the fridge turned on or there's no light. But it's kind of handy to have a light. Oh yeah, there is a light up here, so it's just probably not powered. So same deal here. These things, if they get condensed up, you can take a hairdryer, turn off the fridge, run the hairdryer on there to melt off the condensation. It'll go into that drip tray. What will sometimes happen is the drip tray drain, which is right over here, would plug up because lint and stuff would get in here. And so what I've had to do every so often is clean out the tray as best I can, and then go outside to where the hose comes out to the lower door behind the fridge, and take the hose. There's typically a little plug on the end of the hose to prevent stuff from going up into the hose. So I take off that plug and I blow up the hose, and it blows whatever crap is stuck in the hose line from here down to the drain.